Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Fix.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, you ready? Not too bad, thanks. How about yourself?
Good. Recovering from London, the jet lag.
Yeah, I'm a bit wiped out and I don't have any jet lag to blame. So,
Different struggles, I guess.
yeah,
But yeah, it was nice to meet you finally in the flesh, even though it was very brief.
yes,
It was such a hectic conference.
yeah, it's definitely good. So we're a little bit down on numbers. Sonko says he will join. Um, it's just going to be a couple minutes. Yeah, I guess Greg apologized he couldn't join because he's not feeling well. Um, So yeah, I don't know if we want to wait for Sonko and a few other folks, or we can get started. I think we're probably going to have more stuff that we can fit in potentially today, but hopefully I moved over all of the topics we didn't cover on Monday and Tuesday. I think.
I think
Although
you did, but
yeah, I don't know, Pavel, if we covered that with our runtime RS chat on Monday, or if there was something extra you wanted to talk about.
So I think it would be great if we can um, come to something more concrete. I mean, um, I I have no idea what other contributors think about their commitment to moving to runtime RS. Greg explained Red Hat's corporate stance towards this, but
Yeah.
I have no idea basically what other folks. So it would be probably beneficial if we can clear at least that up and maybe some next steps. I mean, optionally, we did discuss it already.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might be something we need to cover at an AC meeting once people
should
have
this
got
be a recurring, or would it be a good idea to have it as a recurring topic on the AC meeting, the 4.0 release plus runtime RS?
I
Just
think that
because it seems like that we keep discussing it at the PTGs and then it's moving, but it's not moving, and we are deferring to make a decision. So maybe if it's a recurring meeting that is on top of everyone's mind, it's easier to talk it through and figure out what to do.
I think this is actually an excellent idea. this could help a lot. I mean, to be clear, I'm acting in like my basically selfish self-interest, in the sense that if I were able to say uh, internally, I need to work on this because um, the plan is, it would be much easier to justify the time I spent on this, compared to, well, I'm working on something that honestly nobody has any idea about what its future is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. So I think, as we discussed on Monday, we've got a few kind of paths we want to at least see if we can get some data on, which is some idea of performance, some idea of maintainability, and understand if any of the downstream users are strongly for or against as our kind of data points. But yeah, we do need to keep on revisiting this to make sure we don't, it's not something we just have a long discussion about every 6 months and don't actually make any concrete moves forward. So yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to collect some data, which might not happen instantly, but yeah, I think keeping up the questions makes sense.
Yeah, and it, I think since the community already put significant enough time and effort into building it, I think it's important to revisit it from multiple angles. So not just downstream users, but also how much it would, if it would make the community's life easier to maintain the Rust runtime versus the Go runtime and those kind of things. So we don't just throw something out because of trying to get input from downstream users, and I don't know if we will be able to, and I also don't know if users will have a clear enough preference on how a runtime is implemented. So if it performs better and easier to maintain, then they are up for it. But whether it's Rust, Go, C, or whatever other language, I'm not sure if they will have an actual preference. So building out the criteria set for the pro con list will, I think, be an important first discussion point at the next AC meeting, maybe, and offline too.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I guess we can crack on with the first topic. So I was inspired by Sonko saying it's the year of being lean and mean on Kata. So I put a few things that we might want to discuss, whether we want to deprecate, and Greg added one as well, and then we can talk about the deprecation process. So a few things that we have talked about in the past and have effectively kind of skipped CI testing for is the Stratovet hypervisor. That was not a great example of contribution in that we accepted the PRs on the basis that the team behind it said they would commit to regularly coming to AC meetings, being part of the community, and then we didn't really hear anything from them after that. So it was causing problems in some of our testing, so we skipped it. But we could decide that we want to remove it. I guess Run K is similar. We had some maintainers who went quiet probably a couple of years ago. Kata Manager, which we discussed on Tuesday, is another example that we we don't have anyone who's maintaining. So yeah, Greg said about some of the rootfs scripts as well. I don't exactly know what he meant by it, but I have talked about in the past. There is a bunch of like OS builder tests and stuff, which we don't run at all. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's other scripts that Greg was referring to. Unfortunately, he's not able to join us.
Yeah, he also mentioned like we have operating systems that
Yeah,
nobody uses, right? So this
yes,
is
that's
also
a good
something.
point. Yeah,
So
yeah, inside
right,
of here, yeah, we've got.
right. CentOS. I don't know if CentOS is anybody using, but then oh, we have DBN. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, some of those are also not used. So let's see what we can get. Not saying rid of, but just make the code base smaller.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about, like, I think we talked about 9p and stuff before, so there's obviously some
Yeah.
features as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would looking more into this. I'm not sure that we should eliminate 9p per se. Uh, I'm using it mostly for testing CC stuff, and it just works great for debugging, for testing, for feature development. Um, as we all know, Nidus and the snapshotter stuff is just pretty hard to set up
Yeah,
and causes a lot of trouble. So for downstream, I'm always using 9p if I'm doing any CC testing, which just works. The only thing was use after unlink, but I've seen that Greg has pushed some PRs for fixing this 9p um, functionality. So we would have a working file system for the CC use case as well. Um, well, it's still a shared one, but for testing and for debugging and for feature, it's pretty nice. Um, and related to that, I have also a issue. Well, does it relate to that? Maybe. Um, hardening the has a guest and host interface, which may also decide on how we are doing things or which file system we use and what features we need and what features we can remove. Because for the Cocoa use case, we don't want to rely on any host features. So we may remove features in the Cocoa case where we still need it in Kata. So we need to make sure that this works also
yeah,
in both cases and we are not breaking the Kata use case. But anyway, yeah. For now, I hold it off to remove 9p because and I don't know. Did we hear back from the Hygon guys on how they want to move forward? Um, was there any follow up on that? Because since we are talking about features that we want to put in and nobody is coming back to us.
no, I asked them to create an issue with a roadmap, and kind of Chiefing made it on their behalf. I did ask for some more specifics and kind of roadmap, so like what features
Yeah.
they would need to add in, and then haven't heard anything back at all from them. So
Okay. I think I'm not saying we need to be cautious with them, but we need to be cautious what we are adding in general, as seen with the Strato stuff,
yep,
right? Which also drove me crazy in some cases.
yeah, I think we do need to be, yeah, absolutely cautious in general. And a good counterexample of that is Risk 5 and Ruching, who's been, yeah, so
He's all over the place. We seeing
exactly,
him. He is attending AC, so that's perfect, right? That's a
yeah,
prime example how to do it.
yeah,
So
exactly.
the only comment I made to him is keep up the velocity, and then we are all good to go.
Yeah.
But that's all good.
Yeah, so it's definitely in. We don't want to be skeptical of adding any new features, but
Exactly,
we
yeah.
want to.
And we fixed
Find
some
the
shell
right
scripts, so that's also very good.
So I guess we can talk about the deprecation process. Yeah, Greg's not here, but it's something that Greg created quite a while ago, which we basically decided if we wanted to remove features, we should have an actual process for this. So I think Greg looked into what QEMU were doing, and they kind of start with a list of deprecated features and then have a fixed time period. So I'm trying to find. Yeah, so we talked about notice period. I think Greg added some other comments here. Yeah, today. So yeah, Greg's proposal is the deprecation process is kind of multi-stage. So you create a deprecation PR. So I guess we would have a doc page for deprecated features, which is a bit like QEMU does. Yeah, so they have a page which lists on their versions when were they deprecated and why. With some content around that. Then flag that up to the community, and when it's reviewed, we decide on the kind of period that we would allow for review on it. And then I guess the cooling down period, maybe that's a notice period of when we're going to deprecate it. And then obviously we have a follow up to remove the feature within that notice. So I think that process sounds good. I think obviously there's potentially some details of what our default period should be. I guess Greg's suggesting that maybe we decide it on a feature by feature basis, which kind of makes sense. It might be good to have a template discussion of, oh, so we can be a bit more transparent with people and say, oh, we will never remove a feature with less than 2 releases, so 2 months notice, for example, or our default period is 2 months, 2 releases. But I think the process sounds okay to me in terms of a balance between giving users warning about the feature and not having to stay with things forever. I think that this period is the key one. So I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on if this process seems to make sense or would
I
like to
just
see.
have a I just have a quick question. I'm personally not super experienced with release versioning. I just remember that a lot of projects sometimes deprecation is tied to like major releases. I assume it also depends on how much API impact the feature has that the project is removing. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you all considered that part too in terms of, I don't know, removing a bigger feature in a minor release might be counterintuitive to users, but maybe by now this is so in use everywhere else that it might just be how it goes. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and whether we want to abide by semantic versioning. Yeah, if we do, I think we had this discussion. Yeah, Jimmy, I don't know if I got an answer from Greg on that question actually about whether he was proposing, he said 2 extra releases, whether that's major or minor. I think if we are going to say that we're going to use semantic versioning and we won't remove features until major release, then we need to rethink how we do major releases.
Yeah.
Because at the moment we and like we haven't done a major release for 2.5 years, and we're not gonna Kata 4 isn't gonna come out in the next week or so. So I don't think we can say our hands are tied and we've got to support everything for 3+ years of cooldown. But maybe we do need to revisit if Sender is something we want to do.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to really stick to any numbers if we are bumping major or minor or bug fix release, because our monthly release is from December versioning, it's a minor release, but for ourselves, it's a major release. So rather than looking into which number we are bumping, maybe looking into how many kata releases we want to keep a feature ongoing and make this as a metric independent if you're bumping major, minor, whatever else, right? So our major bump would be going from 3 to 4, where we would like introduce runtime RS, which is a big feature, right? But then for all our monthly releases, we are adding so many features that removing a feature would fit into this scale. And then I would say let's maybe use the metric how many kata releases, independent of the versioning, are we going to support a feature moving forward? Like let's say Stratovert, the next 3 kata releases or 6 releases we are going to support, and this is just based on our schedule. If we change the schedule, we might need to rethink that. But for now, I think this monthly schedule that we introduce is pretty nice, and for all downstream projects, it's far more easier to get into the features that they need, and it's moving fast. I'm not saying that we need to move fast with the deprecation, but this could be a metric that we are using for deprecating a specific feature. And then we need, as a community, we can decide if it's a bigger feature that we disable, we can say, okay, this is 9 releases or 12 releases, whatever else, right? Which is tied to some time. And then downstream projects and upstream projects have the time to think about. And I mean, there's always the way of projects coming in and say, hey, we still need the feature. Can you give us some more grace period to implement this new whatever else that they're using? Like, let's say we are disabling 9p and they need a new Word IOFS implementation. So, but let's see. I think that's the better metric, or to think about what we are going to use, because then we are tied to okay, what we are changing version here, version there, just creates maybe some more headaches than solutions.
Marcus?
I just wanted to mention one thing about semantic versioning, which is that both in the Go and the Rust ecosystem, versions like are assumed to have meaning, which is like most important for libraries, right? And I think there's like nothing, or at least I'm not aware of anything that is explicitly exposed as a library from the Kata project. But if somebody were to use like some Go package or Rust crate from Kata as a library, that would be an annoyance if their like stuff is being removed in a minor release, because all the tooling expects that like you can just bump a minor and stuff will still work.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think we had that when we switched version of protobuf from Peerpod's side. When we changed the version, we had loads of failures and had to rewrite a whole load of things, because we sort of consume the Go runtime at the moment. So that is a fair comment.
Yeah, like one difference between adding and removing a feature is when you add something that someone doesn't know about, then they will just not use it, so it doesn't break anything. But removing things does break things. And in an ideal world, all our users would be involved in the project and following what we are doing and what you all are doing, but realistically, that's not the case. And it's not a good user experience if bumping a minor release breaks a system. Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that we are not looking into the versioning that we're doing. My point was our minor releases are Kata major releases because, right? We cannot, if we are waiting only for major releases to remove something, then we need to change our complete release pipeline and how we are doing versioning. So then we need to think about how we are doing that then again. How we,
Zvonko,
yeah,
more than that, like we are explicit about we don't maintain stable branches.
yeah.
We don't
Okay, that's
maintain
different.
anything that if someone wants to maintain stable branches, they are on their own. They should be looking at that because we tried to do that for
Yeah.
several years and we failed because this is like a very hard process to do. So I understand the point that, and trust me, I don't think we should be breaking people left and right just because we can. But two releases is a very good compromise with that, where we can do some blog posts, where we can do something like that. Maybe even a quarter, like 3 releases, like 3 months before we deprecate something. Uh, and I think that's like a good agreement because we don't have the capacity to maintain that. And we have tried and we have burned it out ourselves too.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. If we have a major release, but we don't carry on, like when we go to 4.0, we're not going to maintain the 3.x branch. Therefore, kind of, we could just say every month is a new major release, and we're not maintaining the old branches. So the world just moves onwards and forwards.
Exactly, and that's the point I was making. Every month we are doing a major release,
Yeah.
independent of how we are doing the versioning.
Yep.
If the process for major releases is still to not maintain the previous major one, then maybe we could explore a middle ground in terms of how we are versioning things from deprecation perspective so that it's easier for users to see that something major has happened. Because one thing that I can say from my personal experience with the monthly releases, it's really hard to figure out what's going on. And I know that I'm not a developer on Kata, but not all users are developers either. And even when I ask you all what's going on in the project and tell me like a few things that are impacting users, I usually get silence back. And I know that deprecation is easier to spot, but still, sometimes it's hard to keep up if you're not actively working on the project. So from from that user perspective, I think it's important to figure out how the community can come up with a process that is maintainable, but also gives users the opportunity to be able to spot a change that might break their system. Because if we keep breaking them, then they will walk away. So I'm not advocating for a really heavyweight major release process. I'm just trying to figure out how to be user friendly and stable from user perspective and helping people to keep up if they don't have the bandwidth, opportunity, or enough knowledge to know that they can come here and be in touch with the community and learn things that way.
Ildiko, let me give you some background. We had a discussion where sent an email to Kata Dev mailing list where we posted on Slack where we tried as much as we could to ask whether someone would be willing to take a look and keep or even be using a stable branch. All the answers that we got was, we don't care about stable branch. And that was, plus the stable branch that we had, it was not properly maintained. Someone would just stretch backport patches one day before the release and call it a work done because we never had the resources to do that. With those limitations in mind, I understand what you're proposing, but then I would like to ask you, what is the concrete proposal from your side on what we should do?
I'm not advocating again for stable branches. I'm advocating for finding a way again to be able to give a heads up to people that if this version change happens, then look for deprecations or something. Maybe we will come to the conclusion just to keep doing everything as we are doing it, and that's
No.
okay. I'm just saying that it would be great to explore this from user perspective as well. So again, whether it's stable branches or not, I think that's an implementation detail. I'm not advocating for that in particular. And apologies if I phrased something that implied that way.
No, I think that's exactly what the deprecation process tries to do with what Greg is proposing here, that we have more documentation, uh,
And more
and
time, more
more
documentation, and
time,
more time. We are saying
and
1 quarter here.
yeah. So and I would compare us to a rolling release distribution like Gentoo, and we are providing snapshots of our development to the users. We are not like Ubuntu that where we have long time releases and stable versions, and we have version releases every. So we are rolling distribution here of Kata, because we are having so many features coming in that we need to keep up the pace. And for customers or downstream users like NVIDIA, whatever else, they have their own downstream version where they're making a cut from the upstream version. That's if you look at Red Hat, if you look at NVIDIA, if you look at Microsoft, all those companies that are using Kata are are having their own downstream version where they said, okay, those are the features upstream that I need. I will make a release cut here, downstream it, and use this for my patch releases that I have. Once all the patches are there for having a release internally, they start to upstream all those patches up. And not having this rolling release that we have now, I think we were going to slow down the development of Kata and the downstream users. Usually, downstream has an own release where saying, okay, this Kata release upstream is going to be my base that I'm basing off my product that I'm releasing internally. And for the other users or the downstream users or the other users that are using only the upstream, that's what we are trying to make clearer here with the deprecation process. And then, as I said, we need to define the cooling down period. If it's a more major feature, let's make it longer. If it's a smaller feature, we can make it shorter. But if people are not reacting on Kata Dev, if people are not reacting on any issues, our hands are tied, right? If we do not get the feedback back, we cannot react on those feedback. But the most important thing would be feedback, mailing list, whatever else.
Okay, I think we are getting a bit too deep in the weeds here. I don't want to spend a whole hour on this conversation. I think we can move the rest of it to the issue. Thank you all.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it's just about communication. So we need to make sure we get that right. Okay. So next topic I had was around toolchain discussion. So MSRV, Go versions, Dependabot. We had a discussion quite a long time ago now about trying to come up with a policy for when we bump tool chains, because it caused some disruption to downstream users. We've kind of had a little bit of some more thoughts and discussion about this recently, and like particularly on the Go version, for instance, we had a situation where we talked about using Dependabot to bump CVEs, and one of the CVEs resulted in a Go bump. It was mandatory, and that's basically because we're stuck on Go 122.12, I think we are, but that's not a stable version of Go anymore. They only have two versions that are stable at any one time, and 124 was released in February, I think, so 122 is not stable. We obviously don't want to break downstream, but I think having some realistic expectations for what we are or are not willing to keep makes sense. So my proposal would be for Go, we say that we're always on the older of the two stable releases. So every 6 months we'd bump. We didn't get a lot of a lot of updates, but there was a Miko shared when we had a discussion about MSRV on Coco, the cloud hypervisors kind of ruling and their policy on MSRV is they will only bump it if a dependency requires it, or if they want to pick a new feature and it's at least 6 months old or already, or if there's a security issue that's addressed by it, which sounds like a reasonable a reasonable approach we could take. I've not actually checked what if there's more details in the original issue, which might be helpful. But yeah, from a go point of view, I think we should have say we will always be on a stable release and probably the older of the two stable releases. The other topic that we had is about using Dependabot to automatically bump things. We're at a situation at the moment where if you look at, I think it's true for Go and Rust, but if you look at some of our crates, and I've probably changed it because I've done some refactors to make things in the workspace. So these might have changed, but you can see some of these. We've got crates that are 6 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, 4 years old, and when we're just not keeping them updated. They mostly don't have CVEs, but as I think Marcus made the good point on the discussion on Monday, I think it was, if not many people are using them, the lack of CVEs doesn't mean that there's no vulnerabilities. They've just not been flagged up. So that's the other discussion I wanted to have is, do we want to be proactive with Dependabot and pushing updates in? It might cause some challenges. Like, it's quite interesting. Dependabot's not worked for us for quite a long time. And after I did the refactoring of the agent crates, we suddenly had a Dependabot bump that got merged this morning. We suddenly had a Dependabot bump, which was a whole load of versions. We probably need to change our rules and separate doing these individually. It has caused some things to be broken. So in runtime RS, it looks like. So it's not without its risks, but we've got the CI to hopefully give us good enough coverage to let us assess whether these are the right things to do. So does
I
yeah, go ahead.
I would like to have a just to ask you a question, Steve. Like for the Golang, like it's clear like Golang has actually has like stable releases, right? So we stay on the last supported one, which means that we are still receiving patches for CVs and yada yada. We are good. How do you and depend on what will work for both Go and Rust. My understanding is that.
Yep.
And but how do we deal with the bump on the Rust side? This is in my mind like the most complicated thing
Yep.
to deal with.
Yeah. So I don't think we have a great one, which is, yeah, that's why I was suggesting the cloud hypervisor sort of makes sense. We've had this discussion in the Coco project as well. And yeah, that which also caused some challenges to some downstream projects. I think Rust releases every 5 weeks, if I recall correctly. So if you're 6 months old, you're looking at being at least 5 versions out. possibly more. And yeah, the in Coco they just wanted to pick a new feature, and so they bumped to 180, which 1.80, which should cause some challenges for some downstream. But at that point, it was 6 months old or 7 months old, so I don't have a better starting suggestion than these rules for Rust. But I'm definitely open to input. I think 6 months effectively for Go, we will be a minimum of we'll use a minimum of 6 months old version if we stay on the oldest stable, and if we do similar for Rust, then I want to work well for downstream, but there is definitely a balance between moving the world forward and saying to downstream, if your tool chain is more than 6 months old, at some point that becomes a problem that downstream need to resolve.
Well, I asked the downstream who had this problem with the Rust toolchain bumping, so I'm still not understanding the problem that they have if they're using our build stuff, build pipelines. If they're using different build pipelines, I still need to understand how bumping the toolchain creates so much headaches uh, in some downstream projects. So I'm
So I
still
think it's
waiting.
different build pipelines which are based on, I'll say, slower OSs, which don't update as frequency their tool chains. But sorry,
Right.
The
Right.
argument that I heard was that they have a security team vetted Rust release and they can only use that one and not a newer one.
yeah.
Right. But then you should base your downstream release on a version, on a Kata version that supports. Yeah, okay. It's a chicken and egg problem, but having 6-year-old crates is a no-go from my
I
opinion.
would also say that blocking everything because of one downstream is a little bit too much because I can see here like a bunch of folks have downstream here. Like Agilis has its own downstream, NVIDIA has its own downstream, Microsoft has its own downstream, Northflank has its own downstream, Red Hat has its own downstream. We have seen the majority of the issues coming from how things are done inside Red Hat. Which is like they have this build route that is based on a very old version of RHEL, and then they will just build depending on that. And then they cannot just bump the toolchain there for different reasons. And they also cannot just not follow the process that is already present in the company to release an RPM or to build an RPM that will be used. But we have to figure out, right? So those folks are also part of the community. Those folks are usually quite vocal. We have Greg even as part of the EC. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like if the compromise is like we wait for the slowest downstream possible in order to move things forward or not, because it's hard. You have to move at some point.
And I think that's where having a policy, if we can have a written policy, that might help them, because we might, rather than saying, oh, sorry, like what happened in Coco, saying, oh, sorry, we already bumped it and you guys are broken, that it would, without communicating it or sharing it, I don't think that's the right way to do things. I think if we say, here are our expectations, and maybe like the deprecation process, almost you go, well, I guess it depends what it was. If it's just because we want a new feature, then that's maybe not super urgent. If there's a security update issue, then we might not want to say we will wait till next release to bump. But we could say what's our general philosophy is our policy is we will bump the minimum Rust version to a version that is 6 months old every 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like we have the deprecation process, we might have a endorsement process
Yeah.
for the tool chain, which is the critical part here. But then again, we are blocking us on new cool features that are coming in 1.8 that we can use for semantic checks and
Yeah.
tools like Miri or cargo audit or I mean, it would make our life far more easier if we can use the new tool
Yeah,
chain
is that
features.
is that in 1.84?
Yeah,
Those
1.81
oh, 181.
Miri, 1.82 I think it's audit. So yeah, it's all. If we bump to 1.84, I think we have all the new
Yeah.
cool stuff that we can use on our code base. And do not. We can also eliminate all some of the dependabot stuff with audit and other tools. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's create also this endorsement process or promotion process, whatever else it's called, forward looking where we are going and how.
I have one question about the Penabot on this process. Is the Penabot aware of which version of the toolchain is required for the
That
crates it's bumping?
Yeah, that was the question we had when I put together whichever the other PR was. I think we decided it wasn't because we went, oh, if you put it in, will it cause a bump of something? Oh, sorry, I'm not sure I'm in the right issue. We said it would it cause a bump of something which would force us to upgrade the tool chain, and that very day this happened, this PR. So there was a CVE in XNet. It was only fixed in 123 of Go. However, the reason it was only fixed in 123 of Go is that 122 was out of support. So Dependabot didn't care about that and kind of forced us, well, the tool chain to go up. The minimum API version is a bit different, obviously, but it pushed the tool chain up to a newer version. Um, but yeah, it's not 100% clear, and like it has been rebumped since to go to 124.1, which again I don't think is actually necessary, unless there's been another issue. Because yeah, one XNet 36 I bumped in Cloud API adapter, and I bumped to Go 123.6 to resolve it. There is another CVE that means we've had to go to 123.8. Um, but yeah, it looks like Dependabot doesn't necessarily work with them. The other thing that we've not done a good job, and I did create a rough PR for at some point, is we've not actually done a good job of setting what our minimum versions are. So this was just a draft PR I kind of threw together. We talked about setting a Rust version in the crates so that we actually were sharing with other people. I think Ruching suggested maybe we could use Rust toolchain.toml instead of this. I'm not sure the benefits or differences of both of those. And in the Go versions, I have started. So this is all out of date with, well, it will be once my Go 123 gets put in, but syncing up in Go mod, so it is aligned with our version.yaml. So it might be that if we do have, in quotes, good practice, whatever good practice is in our crates around minimal versions, that Dependabot does a better job. But that is
I see.
to be determined. I'm not sure that answered your question, but I had the same question, and we've it looks like Dependabot will try and update you even if it's not on an older version, but we could dismiss it. If it's not a security update, then we could just say no, we don't want it yet, come back later.
Yeah, and one of the Cocoa called, so I also suggested to use the Rust toolchain, because when you invoke cargo, it will download the toolchain
Yep.
that's listed there, and then it forces you to build it with the toolchain that you have.
Yep.
And but the question is how we are, if we want to standardize it across all projects that we have, like guest components, trustee, and all the other stuff. Yeah, maybe
Yep.
this is another discussion. How we're
Yeah.
syncing Kata with Coco.
Yeah, and our start point is, can we standardize it across all of, because as
Yeah,
it turns out, we've got like 48, which maybe this is another lean and mean conversation, but I think we've got like 48 crates or something, which I had no idea we had quite that many until I started doing this. Um, so yeah, that's why I've also done. People have seen, and Ruching's also kind of extended an process of trying to use workspace dependencies in a better way, so we don't have versions defined in 48 different places, but we have them in groups. So all the agent stuff's together, all of Dragon Ball stuff can be together, all of Runtime RS can be together. Stuff like that will make things better.
holy cargo.
Yes. So yeah, I don't know if we can get to, sorry, in the wrong place, get to bottom of this. Do people think that around 6 months is it's reasonable for people to be within 6 months, or is that going to cause real problems for downstream?
I think that's reasonable. How do we ensure that Coco is not gonna actually bump something on their own side? That we would have to bump on our side to do that.
Yes, that's a great question, because that's basically the issue we had with Image RS. I think one of the ways we make sure is comes back to Tuesday's conversation about if there is better interface and remove dependencies, i.e., if Image RS is part of the CDH binary, then we can build them independently. So I think that helps. Um, but and I think that's one of the reasons we do need to have this try and remove these direct dependencies, so that we're not dragged around by what is, I guess, Coco's sort of a downstream consumer, but yeah, there'll be a bit of the tail wagging the dog on some of this stuff. I don't know if that helps.
It does. It does. So better communication and ensure that
Yeah.
whoever is working is keeping an eye on both.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's certainly what I shared when we had that discussion. I'm not sure we got anything definite in Coco, but I basically said the main problem is that it happened and it wasn't shared to anyone, so we kind of had to do it last minute. There, Miko's suggestion, which is somewhat fair, is they build with both a, in quotes, stable version, with a fixed version, and also with stable, i.e. latest. So there was a suggestion of, why don't we do the same? So for our agent, we would build it with 180, but in our static checks, we'd also build it with, I guess, 186 as the latest. I think that might be useful, but I found with the 180 bump, there were some new features in 180 that there were clippy warnings about us needing to adapt to them, but the actual feature itself wasn't introduced until 180, so we couldn't fix it until everyone had a minimal version of 180. So I think we could do a better job, and potentially try and build things, have a kind of a newest supported and oldest supported, which I think we might even have in version .yamls, but we just keep them the same. yeah, we kind of have a newest version and a version. So it could be that we actually try and gap these and we run static checks on the newest version and the oldest version. And therefore we can kind of make the job of bumping much easier because like when we went from 175 to 180, I think there was like 35 commits in the PR I did because there were so many new different issues and errors and linting problems and stuff. So I don't know if people think that would be useful. Obviously, it adds to our CI overhead. It's another matrix parameter, but that's an attempt we could also do to try and limit the challenges we have of bumping by moving this kind of newest version. So our minimum and Rust Toml, I guess that's the problem of the Rust Toml. If we use that, when we come to build, it will probably just ignore it and pull the old version. So maybe that doesn't win us anything, but that might be worth considering if we test both of these versions. And I guess we have the same thing with Go, but maybe the other perspective is in lean and mean, we just say, let's scrap these newest versions. We're not actually using them and they're always the same. So we could just remove them. I'm not actually sure what the history of having the newest versions was. If we used to do both checks. It looks like it was 7 years ago. So I'm not sure if anyone was around or many people were around who can remember that.
Time cup. We have 3 minutes left.
Yep. So any more thoughts or suggestions on the toolchain versions?
So for the next two, we don't have the time. Can we make sure that we address those in the next AC meeting?
Yeah, I think we can put them on the agenda. I probably won't be here next week. I'm probably going to take some vacation, but
Yeah,
okay.
I know that like we had a bunch of folks who joined here interested in the runtime analysis. So Pavel, are you okay on having this conversation next week as part of the AC meeting?
Yeah, we've already agreed to basically have it as a recurring topic
Oh, okay.
during the AC meetings.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, sorry, I think we discussed that before you joined, Fabiola. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Or it's, I guess, yeah, we've run out of time. I'd like to say, from my perspective, thanks very much. I guess 5 hours was not enough to discuss everything in this vPTG, but yeah, really appreciate folks who have given up a lot of time to join these sessions this week. I think it's been really valuable for the project. So yeah, big thank you.
I would like to join to say thank you all. And I think we had a lot of great conversations and we moved a lot of things forward. So it was 5 hours, very well spent.
All right. I guess we'll leave it here to give people a few seconds before quite a lot of us jump on to the next call.
Thanks all. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Thanks.
all.
Very
Thanks.
much, guys.
Speak soon.
Bye.
See you.